Welcome to this video on the history of money in 10 minutes. Early money. Long before money was invented, people were quite happy making, doing and growing things, exchanging with one another. In small communities, they could remember the payments and receipts. Keeping tabs helped with the key requirement, recording who had been paid, who was still owed. As communities grew, these exchanges became more and more numerous. And as people created things for the common good and rulers began to impose taxes, the accounting was increasingly hard to track. IOU notes might have been very good, but unless you knew the issuer personally, it was hard to verify. So people started to use objects like whale's teeth as a kind of IOU. This step in the exchange process meant that people were free to trade with anyone. They could even store up purchasing power for later use with their IOU tokens. So when people invented money, they had also invented debt. Let's come to metal money now. Once people started using money to facilitate the trade, whether in the form of shell, barley, feathers or whale's teeth, some characteristics of money becomes apparent. Barley is heavy to carry, so it's not portable or durable. Whale's teeth is hard to split into two, so it's not easily divisible. Shells can be picked up on any beach, so it's not scarce. And if the commodity which is being used is like feathers, doesn't have much intrinsic value. Another noticeable feature is that if you had a lot of it, it made you powerful, and power could get you much more. So kings hit upon the idea of minting coins from metals and stamping them with an emblem that guaranteed their weight and value. Metal money satisfied all the requirements of money because it had intrinsic value. The success of metal money brought temptation. Sovereigns realized that by making the coins slim and adding cheaper base metals, they could make money now by circulating these debased currency which was worth less than the face value. Paper money. Carrying large quantities of coins could be exhausting, and it was the early Chinese rulers who got the idea of keeping their heavy coins back in the palace by issuing IOU certificates on paper. Although the paper had no value, people trusted that it is worth what it said it was worth, and that they could exchange it for gold or silver or the coins. As global trade grew, the idea of paper money caught on. But traders and lenders were concerned that it was a bit too easy to print this money. So they tried to link the value of money to gold, which had the benefit of creating a standard of exchange between different currencies. Attempts to peg currencies to a fixed gold standard continued for centuries, but the need for a flexible exchange rates always prevailed. And since the early 1970s, the world has now even stopped trying to keep to a gold standard. Today, the only thing that distinguishes the value of a banknote from any other paper is trust. Controlling money. Years ago, on the Pacific island of Yap, the nearest thing to gold was the Rai stone, RAI stone. It was known for its big size and weight. From the day the chiefs decided to ask their taxes in Rai stones, it meant to all taxpayers, this currency became now universal and unavoidable. The most valuable Rai stones were so heavy that this Yap population had to leave their currency in one place and then trade on promises. Any trader who owned a Rai stone could issue a promissory note against the value of their stone, and thus was born banking. Once the chiefs accept these IOUs instead of the Rai stones for their taxes, they lost control of the amount of money in circulation. In the 20th century, economists argue that the amount of money in circulation affects the economic performance, and it's important for governments to try to control this, but it's not easy. Money and inflation. In the 16th century, Spain brought home massive additional supplies of precious metals from the colonies. But what seemed like a dream come true turned sour when traders increased the prices of their goods to match this new purchasing power. So the explorers who came with these gold were not very better off, and those who didn't have the new gold were even worse off. It was only those who had debts who actually benefited. This was the first appearance of a theory that too much money chasing too few goods can cause inflation, unless traders produce more goods or unless this new money circulates slowly because people start saving more, either because they are rich enough or because they are gloomy about the future. International money. In the 18th century, the British forced their colonies in America and elsewhere to pay taxes in pounds, and they made it illegal for the colonies to print their own money. This meant that the colonies were forced to trade with Britain to access their currency. According to Benjamin Franklin, the American War of Independence was caused because of this big burden of British taxation and the disadvantageous trade which was needed to get British pounds. After the war, the Americans created the American dollar, which, because of the country's vast trade and booming economy, became the widely used currency on the planet. And all countries, including Britain, started storing large reserves of dollars. Money and building banks. By the 19th century, banking was a thoroughly respectable business, making a profit by money lending. Banks paid a lower rate of interest for the money they took in, and they charged more on the money they loaned. But the banks realized that as long as depositors didn't ask for all their money at once, they could in fact lend more money than they had on deposit. This is known as fractional reserve banking. On rare occasions when depositors tried to get their money all out at the same time, there was a run on the bank, and the effect on the economy was very serious. So governments had to start to insure customers' deposits to prevent this from happening, and enabling banks to loan more and more. By the 21st century, banks were taking this fractional reserve banking to a new level. They started funding most of their loans not from the cash deposits from savers, but with loans from other banks, secured against bundles of previous loans. So when there was a run in 2007, Northern Rock Bank didn't have enough money to pay, but the effect went beyond just one bank. Money and saving the banks. To understand how governments tried to prevent global financial meltdown after the 2008's, economists distinguish between two kinds of money. Money created by banks inside the system and money created by governments outside the banking system. When a bank creates money by making a new loan, the bank requires a private asset, the loan, with an equivalent private liability to the borrower to pay it. This is money that's created inside the banking system. Governments can create money by selling new bonds. These bonds go into circulation as new private assets, but there is no equivalent private liability. Instead, this outside money is added to the public debt. Though this is a very small percentage of total money in the economy, it was this outside money that was used to buy up the bank's bad debts and write them off. The private sector retained its wealth with new assets inside the system, supported by a government with public debt from outside. The power of money. Since the last traces of gold standard disappeared in 1973, the world still trades in US dollars even though they aren't backed by anything of intrinsic worth. The US government's decision to borrow billions for its bank rescue and stimulus plan increased the supply of dollars. Some people predicted that this would lead to a big fall in the dollar's value on the basis that economies which print money so they can consume more than they produce will suffer price inflation and exchange rate depreciation. However, it's 8 years and this still hasn't happened. Why then has the dollar retained its value? Perhaps with so much of the world holding its wealth in dollar assets, people have faith that the dollar will retain its value, and the knowledge that so many others share that faith reinforces the general optimism that the dollar will stay strong. Future money. Minted coins and paper money, once the cutting edge of technology, are now used in only 2% of transactions. Credit card, electronic banking has enabled massive global transactions to take place in a fraction of a second. Digital technology is enabling all of this. Bitcoin and other new cryptocurrencies have emerged, which have the same characteristics of money: hard to forge, durable, portable, divisible, limited in supply. And some of these may even challenge the power of governments. But until government starts accepting taxes in these currencies, banks are not going to start lending in them, as they are no different from whale's teeth. One sign that a new form of money has become important is when governments try to control it. Till then, from barter to whale's teeth to electronic banking, I hope you have enjoyed this journey, this history of money. Thank you.